Okay, so we just covered Porter's 5 forces, and before that, barriers to entry, and before that, how to create value, how to look for alternatives, how to basically tap into your buyer groups using functional and emotional reasons, right? So I'm bringing this all together so you can come up with a decision as to whether or not you're going to create your own product or sell someone else's, okay? So very, very quickly, you've got competition. You've got competition, you've got suppliers and buyers, right? Supplier power. And you've got buyer power. And remember what those are? That's the power that your suppliers have when it comes to changing the price. If there's a lot of suppliers out there, they'll have less power. Again, if you have buyers, there's a lot of buyers buyers have a lot of substitute options out there. If there's a lot of competition in the market, you know, they can drive down your price points because you're really competing in that sense. So you've also got the new entrants to the market and you've got substitutes. And you've got substitutes. Sorry for my handwriting. Substitutes. Okay. So for better understanding of that, go back to the previous section, but I'm just bringing it all together and summarizing here. So these are the things that could make you it'll put you in standstill. You don't want to enter the market. You think that your business has way too many threats. There's way too many competitors out there. How can I come up with this new idea? Let's say let's use like a really simple example. Let's think, maybe you're making a backpack, and you want to make a new cool looking design for a backpack. Perhaps maybe you're looking at, one of these cell phone covers, right? These little plasticky cell phone covers, or maybe not plastic, maybe another material, but you want to create a cell phone cover because you know there's a huge market out there. Everyone's buying cell phones. And whilst they're choosing between these different products and services, or different products, right? So you've got to think about what I went over before I started talking about the barriers to entry and Porter's 5 forces. And that was, you want to look at your buyer perception, right? You want to look at ways in which you can create value. And when I say create value, remember I was talking about either you're creating value or you're trying to find where you can identify obvious value, right? Then you've got the functional reasons why someone or people would buy this product or service. And you have the emotional reasons. Emotional reasons why they would buy something that you have, and whether or not you can swap between, if you have a functional product or something that you're selling that purely is a functional thing or has a functional use case, say for instance, like vacuum cleaners, and where Dyson, for instance, they really tapped into the emotional side where they had these first of all, really funky colors. They used advertising in such a way that it was almost akin to the way Apple advertised. So they were getting people to want and desire that vacuum cleaner that just cleans your house, or even the industrial stuff, on the basis that it looked good. I wanted to have it because other people had it. They were creating value, creating a perception of value. And they were working on that. And of course, this is it. The other one here is alternatives, not alternatives. Like we're talking about substitutes and alternatives as far as your competition is concerned. But when I say alternatives here in the value creation element, remember I spoke to you about this setup here being this training platform where I've got this digital board, I have these lights, I have this camera. This could have easily someone could have sold me, there could have been a sales firm that could have contacted me, or they could be advertising to me, selling me an alternative to this setup to provide this kind of service. I could have simply have done this, using a screen recorder and having a bunch of slides on a laptop and me speaking into a mic, and that would have been it. That was an alternative to producing the same thing. And some buyers might just be satisfied with that. So it's about thinking about where you can, or how you can sort of manipulate your product so that you can operate properly within this competition, this realm of competition. And also in the process, of course, have your distributors do the same thing. And they have to understand where they sit. So in the case of your cell phone case, for instance, if we're using that as the example, there's plenty of competition, right? We can agree on that. There's so much, loads of competition. Supplier power, well, you can get these things made from anywhere. I mean, you go on Alibaba.com, you can have them made and you can have your logos put on them. There's lots of suppliers out there, so they're not going to have much control. over their pricing. There's just another supplier that can supply you with that product that you can have designed to your specification. Buyer power, well, they've got so much, right? They've got so many different choices out there, so many different price points at which they can buy these things. They've got a lot of buyer power. New entrants, easy. It's easy for you, me, or anyone to sit here and say, okay, I'm going to make a new phone case. I can jump into that market very, very simply, go to the suppliers, and they're going to give me a price, and I can have 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 units sent to me really, really quickly. So plenty of new entrants, lots of substitute options. You'd think this would be the worst product to get involved with, right? Well, now you've got to start looking at ways in which you can lean on different things to create value amongst this. So very functional purpose, right? So how can you lean on an emotion? Well, you could do something. You could increase the price point and say, I don't know, a percentage of this is going to a certain type of charity. So it gives people an emotional reason why they should buy, a feel-good factor, right? Remember those emotions, those buying emotions? This is really this altruism, right? It's like you're getting them to want to do this for a good reason. Because if they do this, something good's going to happen if I do this. So not that they'll get more, but they'll feel good about something. So you can really hone in on that, and you can lean into an emotion. Maybe you do something. Maybe you create like a slightly hybrid version of this thing. Maybe you have a phone case, I don't know, that has the stand built in, or you have a phone case that has extra lights for like selfies or something. Whatever the case may be, you can tap into function, like you can create value or identify or create value within function or emotion, or provide a completely different solution. It could be some kind of gel that you seal your phone with. I don't know. It could be anything. The point is that this is what you have to work with. This is how you have to look at your company, and you shouldn't be scared off, or it shouldn't put you at a standstill like a rabbit in front of headlights as soon as you see lots of competition, lots of supplier power, buyer power, new entrants and substitutes. But once you've got this and you've thought about all the different ways in which you could promote, lean on your product or sell your product, or have distributors buy into that idea so that they can go ahead and execute for you, you got to think of how much you're making as profit margins. Remember, DSSD. That sits right here. Okay? You got to have profit. Now, on one side, if you're selling someone else's product or service, you're going to have a predefined margin, right? So in the case of me, when I was doing that recruitment, if you go back to the beginning of this whole course where I was talking about how much I was making by placing a permanent candidate into a permanent role, I would be paid 15%, right? So I knew that I could go out to other headhunters with those positions and offer them 10 to 12%, and I'll be taking that smaller amount, the 2 to 3% or 3 to 5%. Now, that was one thing. If I'm selling real estate and I know I'm getting 10% and I can give out 7% to other real estate agents or people down that chain, people, introducers who would connect me with buyers, I had 10% to play with. So working with a company, or working with a product line that has a predefined profit margin or commission or fee that they will pay you for you to sell it, it's very simple to work with that. But if you are going to create your own product, like in the case of my parking business, where I decided I want to own the land, I'm going to build this parking lot on it, or it's going to be a parking lot that I already buy, and I'm going to structure it in a certain way. I'm going to price it up in a certain way where I have to basically, the cost of me to acquire it is going to be a very big factor in the startup, and you've got to weigh in how much you want to how much it's going to cost you. What's your opportunity cost? Your cost in money, the cost in time. If you're already in operating businesses, this is going to be a secondary product of yours. What's this going to be for you? Is it going to be a headache? Is it going to be too much? Or is it going to be something you can action against very quickly? So you've got to consider that. And we're going to go through those pros and cons in a little bit more detail in just a moment. But I want to focus on whatever the case may be, this is where you want to be. Whether you have one distributor working with you, or 2 or 3, or however your product or service is designed, depending on how big that margin is, the more slices you can make out of this available margin. The more slices you can make means, this goes back to that difficulty level, remember? The more slices you can make, so you doing it yourself would be the most amount of money. The second person can take another slice. The third person can take another slice. Depending on how you structure your business, I don't know what it is that you're going to create. It could be a property development. You could be vertically integrated from like manufacturing food, but directly from farm to table. So you could have the farm, you could have the, the wholesale costs, you could have the manufacturing of food, you could have then the distribution of food to restaurants of your choice. So you might be slicing up quite a lot. I don't know what business you're in, but you'll have all these people down your chain that you'll be having execute against it. So you've got to bear in mind that whatever decision you make, and especially if you're going to create your own, you've got to make sure that you have an available profit margin that's going to be sustainable. And what comes into play here is if you're not, let's say, vertically integrated in the way I just explained, and you are having to rely on suppliers, and you are having to manufacture something, and there's delivery costs in play, and all those costs add up, right? But are they going to fluctuate too when new suppliers come into the market, when new entrants come into the market? How much is your profit margin going to be squeezed? Can it expand? Be very mindful of that, because that's also going to determine the success. Because of course, if you're not able to pay, if this reduces significantly, if it's like this, let's use a red pen here. If your profit margin gets smaller and your slices, the amount that you could pay out become a lot less too, and it's just one or two, and you're reducing the amount of distributors you can have in play, whatever the case, if your profit margins are fluctuating to the point where you can't commit to an agreed rate that you're going to pay the next person, whether it's 15%, whether it's 10%, whether it's 6%, whatever the case may be, if you can't commit to those prices, and you're going to cause a disruption in this chain, and that's when it breaks. That's when things start to go wrong. So be very mindful of that. And I'm going to now go through the final element of this section, which is really the pros and cons. So I'll see you there.